Hello everyone, welcome to season 5 of the Amanda Notanda Show. I'm Amanda and thank you guys for watching. This season will have a totally different vibe as we go topical and will be focused on cherishing the men in every aspect, from their mental health to their emotional and social well-being, which will eventually unpack my journey in the last 2 years towards the end of the season. So don't miss any episode for you to understand my journey with the help of my phenomenal guests who will shed light through their journeys as well, which will eventually make sense towards the end of the season. Without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest today. Having bumped into him at his workplace, I was privileged enough to learn what life now meant to him on a totally different level after being diagnosed and survived stage 5 of kidney failure. Welcome, Kyshon.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, it is so exciting to have you here. I am so excited. I don't even know what to say right now.
I'm very excited to be here.
No, that is so awesome. So you already know that this season is focused on cherishing the men. And one of the issues that men struggle talking about is their health.
Correct.
You can attest to that, and hence the reason why we're sitting here. So today we're going to be focusing on men's health as you share your story with us, so as to encourage other men who struggle with making their health a priority due to the stigma associated with men being vulnerable by taking care of their health. So we're just hoping that it will actually encourage, people who are struggling.
Yes.
More than anything, right?
Very much.
But so to start off, really, mind telling our listeners or our viewers about how we met at your workplace?
Yeah, for sure. It was.
That was interesting.
It was a day where you came into my store looking for some video equipment and stuff to help along there, and as we got to chatting, we were discussing about what you do for work.
Yeah.
And it came up that I've had a kidney transplant and what that journey was. Mm-hmm. And just in that discussion, you mentioned how this was hopefully what you were going to do for the season.
Yeah.
And part of having that transplant and having that second go is I want to be able to help out others who are going through that part where it's a severe medical condition.
Right.
And just trying to figure out how to navigate through and take care of themselves. And that's what's brought us here today.
Right. But then what gave you the courage, though, to say, you know what, I am able to talk about it in public? Because I've met so many men out there, I'm not going to lie to you, like, I can't say phenomenal stories, but I can say really scary stories, to say the least, right? And you're like, wow, you guys go through a lot, but nobody listens. Or maybe you haven't been able to vocalize it. You haven't been able to talk to somebody, or just get out there because you're taught to be macho. You're not supposed to show your emotions. You're not supposed to do whatever, right? But what gave you the courage to say, you know what? And it was just on the spot. Okay, I'm willing to come on your show, right? Because some people don't take time to think about it, really.
For me, I'm lucky enough that I'm an extrovert. So getting to go and talk is always easy enough. For my donor, she really stepped up very fearlessly. And having that gift of a second chance, I feel it's part of my duty to share this story. So I've made that commitment that when people ask, I tell the story.
Right.
And the fact that now I can take it to a larger audience. For me right now, it's just been day to day as I encounter people at work or through other events that I go to and they ask a question and I hold no bars on telling the story. And this just gives a wider area to help with different men and their health and their concern, especially black men, as we tend to have some more reservations about going and getting medical help and things like that for it.
So you mentioned something phenomenal. Talk about our race, right?
Yes.
Being like the black man. Is it usually the black community that's not so open about a lot of things versus, other races, do you think?
I think so very much. Okay. We are a race that is strong and proud, like many. But that taking care of that medical help, we always sort of just figured we'll be okay and we tough through it.
Right.
We typically have used a lot of home remedies for things, and we suck it up and we kind of keep going.
Right.
But we're in a civilization now where we've got great medical help, where we can help with some of these things that have caused us to die very young. A lot have high blood pressure just genetically.
Right.
And that's when that can help to cause so many other issues.
Right.
So yeah, as a culture, as Black people, we tend to shy away from it, and it has deadly consequences. It almost did for me. So
that's it. When you say deadly consequences, I'm like, guys, you want to hear this? Let's get into your journey.
Yeah, for sure.
On your health. Why we're sitting here, right? Because kidney failure, not a lot of people have made it through. I will tell you, we buried this very jovial, bubbly man in Edmonton, where I used to live. I come from Edmonton. And he was, I think, in dialysis for about 2 years, or maybe in a coma for about 2-3 years.
Wow.
And they had to let him go. You understand? And today you're sitting here, you're sharing your story, having a second chance to life, right? Mind sharing your story?
Yes. My wife and I met young, and we got married, and we had 3 kids. So just after my 29th birthday, I was working 2 jobs, and we had 3 kids under 6, and so we were just busy. But my wife looked, and she's like, "You haven't had a physical in a long time." She's like, "You have high blood pressure. You may not be well. You should really go to the doctor." And of course I refused. I said, "I'm fine." I did the macho thing.
What old man said, "I'm good, I'm fine.
That's right.
There's no need for me to go and get checked." But anyway.
And I refused to go, and actually got to a point where she gave me an ultimatum. She's like, "You have 3 sons that you guys set an example for. You don't take care of your health. So you either need to go and get in there with the doctor and go get a physical, or maybe you need to leave this home." And of course I was a little snarky, and I said, "You know what? I'll go to the appointment. I'm going to go do that physical just to shut you up," were my exact words. So she reminds me that.
This is the moment I'm going to cut you off. So you were doing it for her.
That's right.
Not for you.
No, I was being arrogant and stubborn.
I'm trying to look for this word. Should I say ego? Should I say pride? Should I say... do you understand? I'm thinking, like, what is up with men when you are given a helper who's a nurturer, right? Why are they there? Because I've also dealt with, it's either me or this type of habit. You understand? Because you've been deceived into something, and then you see that's not what you're looking for, you signed up for. It's a deal breaker, and you're being told, "Oh, you're being a bully." But you didn't say you're being a bully. You're like, "I got 3 kids." So I'm going to do it for you.
That's right. I'm going to prove you wrong.
Oh my God.
And so I thought I'd come out, hey, okay, I know I have high blood pressure. That was it.
Yeah.
So I booked the physical. I went in. My doctor did a check, and he's like, "Hey, you actually seem like you're going to be all right."
On the physical.
That's right. But his exact words were, "I'm going to get you to go do some blood work just to make sure I don't miss anything." So he gave me the blood work, and I waited a good week before I went and did it.
Were you worried?
No, I was just like, I just didn't want to get poked with a needle. Another one of those minor hurdles.
Another man thingy.
Another one.
Men are afraid of needles.
And so I went and did the blood work. And I got the blood work done, and I went to work the next day. And I was at work, and I remember my wife called. And she was like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm in the middle of doing a sale. I'm busy." She's like, "Well, the doctor just called, and you have to go and see him tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. first thing. Because they got your blood work back, and there's a concern." And she was very, very nervous and kept like, "Are you sure you're okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm busy trying to make money right now." And so that night I went home. I slept fine. She said she didn't. She looked after me like I was a newborn, waiting to make sure that I was okay on those worries. Because like you mentioned, she's a nurturer, and she wants the best.
Yeah.
And so when I walked into the doctor the next morning, he gave me the question of, "How are you feeling? Do you feel okay? How are you doing?" I'm like, "I feel fine. Just as jovial as I am right now." And he's like, "Well, you have stage 5 kidney failure. You have 9% kidney function left. You're about 3 months from complete total kidney failure."
Did you say 90%?
9%.
9%.
9%. I was towards
Is it?
So 100 is good.
Like your battery. Okay, like guys, look at a phone. Like check your phone right now, and your battery is saying 9% to die.
That's correct. That's a correct analogy.
Okay, die when it comes to human beings, it kind of sounds weird. We're talking about the phone,
But it's true.
I'm like, oh, okay, but anyway, legit.
And so he was like, you're in dire straits. He's like, you immediately go on the transplant list, and you're immediately ready for dialysis.
Wow.
And I was like, are you sure? He's like, well, we'll go take the test again. So he gave me another requisite, and I was actually driving to get the blood work done when I got another call from his office and said, hey, just go directly to the hospital that handles all the kidney failure. They'll just do the test right there because you are so advanced. You don't need
to wait, yeah.
And so, yeah, I went there, and I had another young doctor come in, and he's looking at the chart and looking at me because I still seem jovial and interactive as an extrovert. And he's like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? And I keep telling him, but I'm like, why is everybody asking me this? Because I feel fine. And he's like, because you are really, really ill. And that really took some time to set in, to really understand that I was sick.
So stage 5 kidney failure, is it similar to, in comparison with cancer, is it like stage 4 cancer, like you're at the very end?
That's right. It's the final stage of kidney failure. So at that point, once it hits 0, you have 0 kidney function. So the organ is essentially shutting down at that point. So I was very, very close. Like the doctor said, I was about 3 months away from being a complete failure at the rate I was going. So it was very important that I get medical care right away. And that's really where I had to actually sit down and think, wow, like what's my future now?
Right.
Because things were upended.
Right.
And it comes at you so quick.
Did you think about The Walking Dead?
Yeah. Working Dead.
I'm thinking like zombies. Like, am I actually a zombie right now? Like, because that's the one thing you're thinking about. You're thinking, if they're saying 9% left, really, like, so what was I doing? How come I didn't feel this, right? And that's the second thing about nowadays. You take, for example, another thing that's killing young people, especially our generation, stomach cancer.
That's right.
And you can't really detect it unless you go for these checkups and all that fun stuff. I wouldn't know about prostate, but apparently also men are shy to get checked on that, right? Because I heard some people think some people will suspect they're being promiscuous. I don't know how, but cancer is cancer. You understand? So for you to even get to hear that, how then did you get to deliver the news to your wife? Start with, I told you so, type of thing.
Very much. I called her and said, hey, it's really bad. Because she had been worrying the whole day, knowing that I had to go do this appointment.
Yeah.
She took our children over to a friend's house, and she came right to the hospital. And the doctor went over what the future looked like, that I would need to get a transplant. That was the option. And with the way my kidneys were decreasing, I needed to go on dialysis, which would be a regimen just to clean my blood.
God.
So there was a lot of life changes coming. And it was one of those that we had to look at it as a team, and how are we going to tackle this? Because now the world sort of changes. It took a few weeks before I went in and did the surgery for dialysis, because the key thing was that I still looked okay. I was still functioning. I was still going to work, which is what really threw the doctors off. If it wasn't for the blood work, there wasn't any physical things showing a lot of. The only thing
is the physical supposed to show in a normal situation?
Case. And I wasn't quite normal that way. I was fatigued, but I chalked it up to having 3 kids under 6 and working 2 jobs and just coming out of the holiday season. So I just figured I'd just been tired because I'd been busy. But I didn't have a lot of the other symptoms that came along with it. So the blood work is the way that I have to track it and make sure that I am doing okay, even still to this day. And that's what really made it kind of unique, was that the doctor said, like, you look fine, but you're not fine. Wow. And that's where we really had to really take some time and think about it. And then, and they tried to see, like, hey, can we manage it with medicine? And then it started decreasing. So they're like, hey, we got to put you on dialysis. And of course, I'm also an optimist. So I was like, all right, I'll go. I'll get this kidney. I'll be off and running. I'll be back up in no time. the wait list for my blood type was about 7 years.
I was about to go there.
So I was like,
I was about to say, okay, you're being told right now
yeah.
that this is what you need. So how long did you have to wait for that? And having been told 7 years, yet you have 3 months. Think about that.
That's right. The dialysis is what was going to keep me alive. And so it was critical that I do it. The method I was on was peritoneal, so it was a daily one that was done in the house for 8 hours, and I had to do it every day. They're like, you start missing a few, your functionality is going to drop because it's not really going to increase. It's just it's only going to go down. It's not going to go up. It's already failing. So when they told me that 7 years, again I was like, all right, I'll get a kidney somewhere. I won't be that long, and I kept working. Actually, I kept going to work. I worked for about 14 months after that diagnosis, which I look back and maybe I should have taken some time off and cared a bit more for my health. But as a man, I was figuring, I can work through it. I'll get a new kidney soon enough, and off we go.
So when you heard 7 years, what was going through your head? Like, you can be an optimist all you want, but still.
I figured I could do it. I figured I'd get one sooner.
Talk about the power of the mind, yo. Talk about the power of the mind, because I hear there's this podcast that I'm actually listening to where it talks about how your mind can actually heal your body, right? When this doctor was actually saying he had an accident and he hurt his spine and whatever, and was told he was never going to walk again until he told his body, his mind, I am actually going to walk and I'm going to work towards walking. And right now he's not in a wheelchair, he's whatever. And right now you're telling me you're being told 3 months and 7 years. Just the comparison to me is like absurd. Somebody would just say, you know what, I'm just going to give up. This is it for me. But what kept you going?
It was having 3 young children.
Right.
I wanted to see them grow up. And I figured, how hard could it be? I plug into a machine at night and I just go to work. And I actually did okay for that first little bit. With the Canadian system, when it comes to a donor, you can't recommend anybody. They have to step forward on their own. And with our system at the time, they would only work up 1 donor at a time. So if you had somebody that would volunteer, they'd have to go through the workup for it. I was lucky enough. As you may know, whenever you have these major life events and you have children, you should always tell their teachers and caregivers, hey, there might be some change in the home, so look for behavioral issues. So we went and told actually our middle son's preschool teacher and said, hey, I've just been diagnosed. It's pretty dire. So if our son is acting up, let us know. And she looked and said, I think I'd be a match. And we were like, just like that. She didn't even hesitate. She just paused for a moment and said, I think I'm a match.
Can I tell you a joke, actually?
Yeah.
That's a joke. Let's lighten up the tone. That reminds me of this one time, where I was working in oil and gas. And there was a couple that I think the wife couldn't bear kids. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to be a surrogate. Just like that. And I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
and I become a surrogate, you know what I mean? Like, from nowhere, where you just step out and say, you know what, I want to help.
That's right.
You understand? Because you're just being moved to do that, right? Although it didn't go ahead with that because, they were also having different options as well, right? But I was like, if you need help, I'll give you my room. But anyway.
Yeah, well, my daughter was the same way. She's like, I've got a kidney for you if you want it. And we were like,
how old was she then?
Well, she was a mother of adult children. So I'll put it at that.
Wow.
And it was a Caucasian female. Yeah. So it was almost the physical opposite of me. But it was a good match. But as we were going through that process, there was a point where they said the potential donor hadn't qualified, had failed. And that was the moment where I broke. And definitely lost a bit of that optimism at that point. So, it definitely is a roller coaster. And you got to have that really good network around you.
Right.
So,
right. Another big question.
Yeah. And so.
You said we had to reassess the roles
Yes.
in the house. Man, pay attention to this. Pay attention to this. This was. You had to reassess roles in the house.
That's right.
Talk about pride. Talk about ego. But you had to take that out, put it on the side.
That's correct.
How did that work? Didn't you feel demasculated? Didn't you feel, or you were focused on your health? Let's get into that.
Yeah. Well, it was really hard because it was actually a call from the doctor that said, hey, your blood work wasn't looking so good. You're not allowed to work anymore. That's why I stopped working. It was a doctor's call. So I had to go home to my wife and say, I can't work.
Like you're pregnant, you're like 8 months pregnant. No, you need to stop.
Yeah. I'm on long-term disability is what it was. And at the time, she was working part-time where I was working full-time. And that's how we were able to raise our kids without needing any nanny or caregiver.
Right.
So she had to go to work full time, and now I had all of the household duties of getting kids to school and preschool, cooking meals, tidying the home. So you do have to check your ego, because if you're going to be a team, sometimes you got to change the team role that you do. And bless my wife's heart, because she went back to work full time. And she always wanted to be a mother. That was her key thing, was to do taking the kids to school and packing the lunches and that super nurturing part to it. And I had to ask her to put that aside.
Wow.
And so it's a compromise on both ends, but she did it without any hesitation. And so I know I'm the luckiest man on earth is what I would say.
Shout out to your wife. And you know what? This is the... I have no filter. I'm sorry. This is for the guys out there who are afraid of strong women. The reason why you get a strong woman is when you're down, they will get you up. They will, in my language, they will jig you.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Very
Like, I just fail to understand when men see this strong women, they're like, oh my gosh, they'll fail to submit. No. You just need to show the love. That's all they need. Period. Once you show the love, trust, everything. I always say the one easiest person to please is a woman. She's the love. She will do anything, even licking the floor. Not licking the floor, but I'm just saying that's how much we can be so loyal to love. You understand? Yes. And also, strong women have this whole thing. They're just looking for love because, of course, they have things around already. They have really accomplished, well, if you're not married at my age, really accomplished a whole lot of stuff, right? Yeah. But then I find men get intimidated by that. I'm like, you shouldn't be intimidated because something can happen to you and at least you know your girls got you, your wives got you, your partners got you, right? And this is a good example. But didn't you feel as though, okay, what are my kids gonna see? You understand? Or how many boys do you have?
3 boys.
All 3.
All 3 are boys.
What are my boys going to see?
That's right.
Do you understand? And I totally get it when men have that fear to say, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm not the man of the house. You understand? But then also show that other side, right? To say, you know what, your mom can still take care of things and I'll be fine. And we'll get back to, to normal, I guess, in the future. So how then did you go past that phase?
I had to embrace it because the kids still need to be raised. So I watched a lot of cooking shows because I didn't really know how to cook. So I learned some different cooking stuff. And, it was taking over some of those roles where I did the grocery shopping. Wow. And so learning how to really navigate through a grocery store and put together a grocery list.
I like that.
There was a lot of humbling and saying, we still got to get through this.
That's it.
And it was such a growth moment, and I got to spend time with my kids because I got to take them to their sporting events.
That's it.
And really kind of be at everything where I'd missed a lot before because I'd always been working 2 jobs and doing all this extra work. Where now it was just, all right, guys, it's you and I, and we're gonna do this.
Right.
And my wife, as she went to work, her career advanced a lot.
That's it.
Which was great for her on that end. And she was still a super mom at that point as well. So
I think the women, we're super women. This I will laugh about. Right. We are super like that. You understand? That's why they say women know how to multitask, right? And funny enough, me having to do these discussions was, we're seeing this crisis, if I should put it that way, where us as nurturers, we've done a lot for the kids. We've done a lot for families, but then nobody's taking care of our men. You understand?
Yes.
And I'm thinking, you know what? Why can't it come from a woman's perspective to say, I am ready to help you as a man, regardless, like you don't need to be my man, but then we need to have that space for men to be vulnerable, for men to be emotional, and for men to be human.
Yes.
Is what I'm looking for, right? And having to start cooking and all that fun stuff, learning new things, new duties and whatever, you develop new skills.
A lot of new skills. I learned a lot of skills. I still do the grocery shopping to this day.
Wow.
So it's one of those that she was glad to get it off her plate and said, you can just keep that one.
Oh, wow.
But I also have my pattern that I like the way I get my groceries done.
Right.
And things like that. So... You know, it turned out being for the better because now we've kept that for almost 10 years.
Wow.
So it's just been a great little route that way.
Right.
But you do have to check your ego as a man and say there's still jobs that need to get done.
Yeah.
And I've got to learn how to do them and figure it out. And, you know, I had to ask some questions. I had to ask her how to do certain things that I maybe just wasn't so good at, like some cooking things that I was just like, when it says this, like, can I use something else instead?
Right.
And so you learn a lot. You get a lot of sobering.
And experiment. And then you become a chef. You become, what's his name? Gordon Ramsay.
I'm not quite there yet. I'm close. Soon. But I watched a lot of his stuff.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
You know, and so it's great because even the kids, too, like, they have to make a shift of, so dad's cooking dinner, and there's a few, you know, they take the fork and sort of poke the dinner a little bit and be like, all right, we'll give it a go.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's some days where I'm like, hey, we're doing ice cream for dinner. And
oh, my gosh.
Throw it out the window.
Okay, guys, don't take his advice for now. Please. No ice cream for dinner, people. But then again, now let's get into vulnerability as a man. A moment where you said, I had tearful breakdowns in my darkest moments.
Yes.
There's no guy who actually, or man, if I should put it that way, who's able to be that vulnerable and say, you know what, I cry sometimes and you need to cry, right? Because that's another way of releasing, right? And the difference between men and women is we're able to vocalize things anytime, any second, right? And then we're able to break down and cry.
Yeah.
And that's how we let it out. Right, I'll tell you, like 2 days ago, when I was going to get ready for having these looks, somebody from Norway just starts telling me about, one of the ladies from the salon starts telling me about when their father passed away, just like that. Like they passed away 2 years ago, beginning. So I was, as she was speaking, I was like, this is the reason why we heal faster. You understand? Like you just open up, you're like, you know what, up until now I'm still struggling with ABC, to a stranger. But with men, it's different, right? So do you want to walk us through the vulnerable moment of tearing down, you know, and how that made you feel?
Yeah. There's one moment that really sticks out.
Yeah.
Throughout the course of the week, I've been watching several shows, and they had brought up kidney issues or kidney disease, whether it be in a comedy or on any of those. And then I was watching one medical show, a medical drama, and somebody had a kidney issue, and they were going and they were cutting in. And I kind of freaked out because I was like, oh my word, that's what they're going to do to me. They're going to cut me open. And I started just crying, and I couldn't figure it out. And I called my wife. She was in a meeting for work, so she couldn't answer. I had to call my mom. And I was like, Mom, and she's like, what is wrong? Because I was almost incoherent because I was crying so hard. And I had to just really just be like, why is this happening to me? I'm being cut open, and they're gonna what are they gonna do? Am I gonna what's gonna happen when I'm under? And I started really, really panicking.
And some people don't make it through it.
And luckily, you know, I have a mom who was a nurse for 30 years.
Wow.
So she was able to just help kind of walk me through and brought me down. And as I started to pull it back together, my wife was able to give me a call afterwards. And talking to her, you know, that really helped to round it in. So having those two strong women that were there, when you do break down, you've got to just let it happen and just let that breakdown happen and call someone trusted that you can go and just lay it out for and just say, here's where I am and I don't know what to do.
I have a question now that you've brought that up. This was actually a question that also came up in my last episode, where, like, right now you bring it up again. And I hope people are listening to this part because I find it to be really important. If you have a partner that you're not able to tell some of these vulnerable moments or to break down to, what's the point of being with that person? I'm still trying to understand, because I've seen, some situations where people can come and cry to you, but they say, I can't cry to my partner. Do you understand? And I'm thinking, you're not yet married. It will only get worse. Do you understand? Because this is the reason for being in a relationship, for you to see how comfortable you are being together. And this is supposed to be your life partner through thick and through thin, right? And right now you telling me that you called your wife and you were crying.
Yeah.
Right? To me, I'm thinking, if you're saying I can't tell my girlfriend, so what are you guys doing?
And that's so true. You have to have that spot where you can break safely.
Yeah.
And let it out. Because I don't know what I would have done if there was nobody to call that day. If I didn't have my wife or my mom to call, it would have been a really, really rough time because I still had a toddler at home. So there was still a child that I had to try and take care of, and I was breaking down.
And what's even funny too, you called women.
That's right.
This is the moment that I love. But anyway, you called women.
Yeah.
And because we're nurturers, man, I don't know how to say this. I wish people could just understand, because I know men are not able to talk between you guys selves and say, you know what, I'm going through this because this guy is gonna laugh at me, right? Or how does that work? Why aren't you guys able to talk among you guys?
I think as men, you have to be honest with each other. So I do have two friends that I can't actually really break down to when those moments happen. So I'm lucky that way.
Okay.
I've got two really good friends, one that I've known from high school and one that I've known for a decade or 15 years or so, that I can call, especially if I'm conflicted on something or I'm like, I need an unvarnished ear that I can just talk to and just get it out. Am I on the right path or am I off my rocker? You need to have that part. And that comes down to investing in that friendship and really being open and honest.
Right.
Having parts that you guys bond and align with and being willing to go past the surface of talking about sports or music or clothing or whatever it is and actually talk about, like, hey, something's going on in your world. Where can I help you? Right. And as men, it's one of those where I think we have to go and put the step out first to our friends and say, hey, if you need somewhere to chat, I'm here. Because when your day comes for it, they'll remember that, hey, when I was in that tough spot, that was the guy I could talk to that didn't look at me as any less of a man afterwards. Right? And even could help build you back up as a man for it. Right. And that's so critical and important. Right. Oh, it really, really is. And I think as men in this generation, I think that's now becoming more acceptable. It's being more understood.
Which was going to be my other question to say, do you think our generation, or rather the world today, is doing a good job at addressing issues of men's health, to be specific, since we're talking about men's health today, and men are men slowly becoming comfortable opening up about going to get checked, opening up to their friends, opening up to their, most trusted people? Yeah. Do you think it's happening in today's world?
I think it is starting to shift. Like, I myself in my 40s.
Okay.
And a big catalyst for a lot is I think we saw a lot of our loved ones perish or be very, very ill and realize that we need to address this and we need to support each other. The macho days are kind of done. We don't need somebody who's too tough to get any help for it.
Right.
It just seems silly now. That's not to demean any men who are strong, but that strong doesn't have to be big and burly and super headstrong to where there's no reasoning. It has to be a set of can you connect and understand? And then if you need to open up, you can.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot had gone to maybe just online anonymous places where they could chat. But then the person on the other end is only invested into you through the screen. Right. There's something to be said for being able to, in person, or have something where you have a genuine human connection.
That's it.
And I think that is what we're realizing, especially after a pandemic, which had severed several parts of that actual genuine human interaction.
Yeah.
They're starting to value it a bit more.
Yeah.
As we're now able to go back in and head out to a pub and have a drink with a friend and go out to a park or go do whatever, go to sporting events again and start to genuinely have connections that we got to say, hey, it was a rough go.
Yeah.
And here's where I'm struggling.
Right.
You know, and that's where I think my generation, at least, is that older part. We're starting to realize it. And with having now in my home 3 teenagers, and they've seen their father be ill.
Right.
They don't remember a ton, but they know that I've got a lot of medical concerns.
Right.
They're very upfront about medical things if it's needed. Right? It's not a taboo thing to talk about. Because they're like, look, Dad had a machine in the house that was plugged into him every day. And so that's kind of what they remember. They don't remember a lot out of it, but they're like, that wasn't fun for him.
Right.
And so, this generation is great at holding each other accountable.
Right, right.
One of the things I love with my work is I work with a lot of young, bright adults. Like my coworkers that are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
I marvel at some of their intelligence and social intelligence that they have.
Yeah.
They have just a social intelligence for one another that just blows my mind. And as I see them on social media and stuff like that and see them in their world and see just how they are connecting and also knowing them personally, I'm like, yo, it's 2 of the same person.
Right.
And I love that there's not a fake facade that I see out of them.
Right. And just the fact that our generation, actually are able to understand the younger generation. Keep in mind, like our parents, it took time for them to catch up. Like, dude, you need to catch up.
You need to get on board.
You need to get on board. Like, no. And my mom is beginning to catch up, although sometimes she forgets when she sees other people's situation. They're like, just stop. Need I remind you that you've been there, but you've kind of caught up. You still have a lot to learn as well. But it's amazing that you get to see your coworkers and having the social skills that they have and being accountable for each other, which I hope all of us will have soon.
Yeah, I think it will come soon, and they're going to be the ones bringing up that next generation as they go into marriage and bearing kids or whatever route that looks like for them.
Yeah.
And even for myself, as the old guy around work sometimes, I lead over like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And they're always willing to help. Be like, all right, Grandpa, let's all guide you through.
Right.
And so,
I like when they say Grandpa in your 40s, but anyway.
And so it's really great, but they also will ask questions about medical things where I'll guide them through and be like, hey, this is why it's important.
Yeah.
Because I do get a lot of the question of, why are you so just happy and joyful? I'm like, because I got a second kick at the can. And where you talk about that, sharing your story. Yeah, I've got to share this story because it is really impactful because it was a journey.
Right.
And if I can spare anybody else from going down that journey and learning the hard way, I feel it's part of my duty.
Part of your duty. So talk about how it has changed your life, where you say, I can never go back to who I was. Yeah. Who's the new Kyshon versus before, where you were like, I'm good. Yeah. And now it's go get checked. Or who's the new Kyshon?
I learned that happiness is important.
Okay. And what is happiness, though?
Happiness is what makes you feel good inside your soul without displacing others.
Yeah.
So during some of the medical time when I was in some of those abysses, one of the tips I was given was to make a bucket list of things you want to do when you're well. And I realized as I made that bucket list that there's just a lot of things that I want to do and enjoy. And then I still have to work, though, when I got my transplant. Yeah. So to go invest somewhere at 40 plus hours a week, I need to enjoy it. I had to leave a job that I didn't quite like.
Right.
And now my current company that I work with, I am so happy. As I mentioned, I get to work with such inspirational youth for it. I get to meet great customers as I go through the course of the day.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. Well, thank you. No pictures, not a box. I'm just saying.
And that's what happiness is. It's that if
yeah.
I've got to go and invest time somewhere,
Yeah.
it has to be meaningful to what I do and to who I am. And it has to align with what I want to put out into the world.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the great parts. And that's why I work where I work, because I enjoy it fully.
Right.
I don't come home angry for days. I don't come home stressed out.
And I remember when I was shopping, you knew your products.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, how do you use this? You're like, oh yeah, this is da-da-da-da. But the difference between, first of all, what are you looking to do? What are you looking to accomplish? And then I tell you what I'm looking to accomplish. You're like, okay, so this is what you need, da-da-da-da. And then I'm like, this person knows his job. And you felt so, I could tell that you love your job, that you love what you do, because some people are like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get through the day. Or they won't even give you enough information. Well, whatever works for you. You know, some people would say whatever works for you, but you had to ask what I want and what was best for what it is that I'm looking for. And I truly appreciate that.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was definitely one of the highlights. I get to meet such unique people, and when you invest in others, and just taking a moment just to say, hey, who are you? How are you?
Right.
What are you up to today?
Right.
You can meet fascinating people, because everybody's fascinating in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
You just have to make the step forward to go find them.
Right.
I think a great saying is everybody's just a friend you haven't met yet. And that's how I sort of treat it at work.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's part of that happiness, is I can't work somewhere that doesn't make me happy.
That's it.
And as I look at the new generation coming up too, and I've had this discussion with a lot of others, it's hard. This generation has come to the generation coming up, I should say. It's very hard to convince them to go and work somewhere that they don't like for 40 hours a week. It actually doesn't make sense to say go work somewhere I don't like just for money.
Yeah. No.
Because you can monetize anything now.
Yeah.
That it actually it doesn't make sense
for them. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, they're right. Like I can't work somewhere that doesn't fulfill me.
Yeah.
I'm now on, May of 2023 will be 10 years post-transplant.
Oh, wow.
So that's where I'm getting my 10 years of that next go at it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I feel I've accomplished a lot. I've accomplished 2/3 of that bucket list in the 10 years. So I'm glad. And I've got some plans to knock off the last little ones.
Yeah.
But, I got that gift of an organ to give me life again.
Right.
How am I going to sit at home and be angry and be bitter? Can't
For who? Towards who?
That's exactly
it.
So you got to go and grab life and enjoy it.
Right.
And, enjoy getting to see my kids grow up and getting to go coach their soccer teams and show up and be at graduations from high school and things like that. To taking my wife out, and we go on dates now, because it's, she is so important to me.
Right, yeah.
That, hey, I've got this chance. Let's go grab a movie, or let's just go for dinner, or let's go for breakfast, or, let's just hang out and put something on the TV and just hang out and pop some popcorn.
Right.
But you got to enjoy those days. You got to do what it takes to enjoy, and just figure out how to make it work with whatever you're earning.
Of course. And so as we conclude today's episode, like, how best can us women, as we ask you, the men, as the nurturers that we are, how best can we help in giving men support or space to express their emotions and any other challenges that men may be facing?
There's a few really critical parts. I think being willing to stand up for what you think is correct. Okay. My wife made sure I went and got that physical. She didn't know why, but she knew that she had to give me that ultimatum. And that's the only ultimatum she's given me. And we've been married 20 years.
Wow.
And that's the only time that she's really had to put her foot down on something. But then also, too, those times when I break, I was never judged for it.
Lovely.
It's never been brought back up as you're weak or you're this or you're that.
And women are good at that sometimes. They'll remind you. They will remind you. I'm sorry, there's a book that I just read too by Brene Brown, where when I was doing my research on this episode, on the season, where she was saying, it's funny how women say, oh, please be vulnerable with me. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. And once you become vulnerable, like, ha, what kind of man are you? And it makes sense. Like, I'm like, women, slow down. Like, slow down. Think about, you're talking to a human being. You're not talking to a robot, because we both have emotions, regardless of gender. Understand? So to me, I'm like, it makes sense that way. Right? And hence we need to bring up these issues so we can also, in as much as this season is focusing on cherishing the men, I hope it speaks to women as well. To say, you know what, let's be open to listening and still respect in the best way we can, because respect goes both ways. That's right. You know, and you're allowed to be human as a man, right?
Yeah.
But in conclusion, the last question would be, how best can we support the men by letting them know that it's okay to be human, just to be human?
I think creating a spot where they can have that discussion that's more than just surface. Because, you know, it can get busy, especially if you involve kids and things like that.
Yeah.
Take some time, one-to-one to connect, and just check in and be like, how are you doing?
That's it.
Like, really just slow it down. It can be a day when you're watching TV and the kids have gone to bed, and just say, like, how are you doing? If there's something that's on there, let's talk about it now, or at least put it on the books to talk about it. I still do that today, and we still do that today. I will go and be like, hey, hon, are we good?
Wow.
I just need to know, because we're in this. If you're not good, tell me. And my wife was very transparent on that. She has never, I've never had to guess her emotion or her feeling. She's very like clear.
Women are like that. You ask me a question, I will tell
That's
you.
That's right.
Yes. Why hide?
So yeah, so giving that honesty, about what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And let him be honest with his feelings.
Right.
It really is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And it has to be, it's not always a two-way street that's going parallel at the same time. Sometimes one's going a bit more one way than the other.
Yeah.
But it will balance out over time. But you've got to just be available, be vulnerable, be ready, both men and women for it. And so as the women come through with that nurturing nature, let that guide it. And as for men, you are human, and there are resources available. But if we're going to lead, then we've got to lead ourselves to our help.
That's it. Guys, you heard it for yourselves. This is so amazing, and thank you so much, Kyshon, for coming through and sharing your story. And I'm just hoping that it will actually encourage both men and women out there to be there for each other, and for men to be able to be open and vulnerable and be human. And I truly appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule, where we had to book 20 years in advance to say, you know what, we need to be with Kyshon today. But I truly appreciate it. It was truly an honor getting to learn your journey, right? And hearing your story. And I just hope, you know, our listeners and our viewers will be able to, you know, understand or get something out of it, if I should put it that way, not just for themselves, or maybe they may know family, friends that may be going through that, and say, dude, I think you need to step up and focus on your health and all that fun stuff.
You bet.
But thank you so much for coming, Kyshon.
Thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure. This was so much fun.
It was fun. I like that. I like it when you guys end up saying, you know what, it was so much fun. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Keep watching the Amanda Natanda Show, because there are lots of phenomenal guests that we're going to be having on this season. So it is actually super exciting. And today we're just chilling with Kyshon J today. And I feel I'm happy. I'm happy that, you know, you made it through. So remember, little girls with dreams become women of vision. Take care, and God bless you. Till next time. Bye.